Sorry, Periscope was going crazy there. Okay, so we were talking about healthy relationships and characteristics of healthy relationships and how to tell if the relationships in your life are healthy. So we stopped at identifying some of the characteristics, and I'll just pick it up briefly. You're able to resolve conflicts fairly, and you are receiving as much as you are giving. It is not just where the person is taking. If you are just joining me, I am Javon Frazier, author and founder of the Heavenly Jewels Alliance, and we're going over Chapter 9 of my new book, Discover Your Inner Sparkle and Let It Shine. And this chapter is Matters of the Heart. It discusses healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, defining love, and how to develop trust and intimacy after a traumatic experience. So, if you would love to get the book, follow along, you can do so by visiting my website at www.heavenlyjewelsalliance.org. Okay, so now that we've defined unhealthy relationships and some of the characteristics, we defined healthy relationships. Let's look at unhealthy relationships. So clearly, unhealthy relationships would be the opposite of everything that we just discussed. An unhealthy relationship is like toxic waste. They kill you and they destroy your life. Maybe not physically, but definitely spiritually and emotionally. Characteristics of toxic relationships include isolation and control, lies, dishonesty and manipulation, harassment, criticism and insensitivity, unfairness, selfishness, jealousness, and envy. An unhealthy relationship can be detrimental both physically and emotionally. It causes unwanted stress, anxiety, and low self-worth. While in an unhealthy relationship, you may feel like your growth is limited. You may feel pressure to change, hide, or downplay who you are for the other person. You may feel worried or pressured when you disagree with the other person. You may feel like your ideas, feelings, and emotions are belittled or devalued. You may have lack of privacy, feel the need to justify or validate yourself, and experience a lack of fairness. That's interesting. So even if you are not in a physical, abusive relationship, your relationship could still be toxic and unhealthy if any of these characteristics are present. Okay, not all abuse is physical. There's emotional abuse. There is mental abuse, controlling. That is a form of abuse. Verbal abuse, belittling you. All of those things are forms of abuse. And if you don't pay attention to the red flag, it could lead to physical abuse. So many survivors stay in toxic relationships for many different reasons, including fear, poor or low self-worth, and misconception of love. So many times you hear people say, but he loves me, but she loves me. Oh, but I can't leave him because I love him. No. There's a little bubble in this portion of the book where I say love is a choice. So if it ever comes down to you and the other person, choose you every time. You have to love yourself enough to remove toxins from your life. Remember, self-love is not selfish. It's okay to walk away from unhealthy relationships and not feel guilty. And it doesn't mean that you love the person any less. One of my cousins told me years ago to love from a distance. And I never understood what he meant by that. Because I always felt like if you love a person, you have to be there for that person. If you love a person, by any means necessary, whatever they need, you have to be there. No, not necessarily. Sometimes by being there, you're enabling that person. So sometimes you have to love them enough to walk away. Or, more importantly, you have to love yourself enough to walk away. Okay, so how to detox from unhealthy relationships. Okay, so you found the courage to walk away. You realize that your relationship that you're in is unhealthy. You realize that, hey, I'm not really getting what I need. I'm not really getting there's no growth, there's no potential. And it's okay, it's okay to walk away. So, if you're in a toxic relationship, the best thing you can do for yourself is to remove yourself from the situation. There is a possibility that situation can improve. There is a possibility that you can go to your mate or your family member or whoever is, causing you to be in an unhealthy relationship. It's a possibility that you can go to them and say, hey, this isn't working for me. This is, I feel XYZ. And your needs can be met. You guys can work at it, and your relationship can improve. That's possible. It has happened. But the longer you stay in a toxic situation, the more harm you bring to yourself. So if you want to give that situation a chance, that's absolutely fine. But also recognize the red flags. Know what your non-negotiables are. Know what your limits are. If you address your concerns to your mate or to your friend or to, whoever, and there isn't a change, then you have to then find the courage and the strength to say, you know what, I love myself more, and I'm going to walk away. And that is okay. So, depending on the nature of the relationship, it may be impossible or difficult to totally end communication and ties with that person. I was in a very unhealthy relationship with my mother for years. I mean, you can't cut your mother off. I tried. This is me being transparent. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. But I mean, let's be for real. I have children. They love their grandmother. And I love my mother. So it was difficult for me to cut those ties altogether. So I created boundaries. I began to limit, the kind of interaction that I had with her. I didn't have to answer the phone just because she called. If she called and I wasn't in a good space, or if I felt like the conversation wasn't, what I wanted to engage in at that time, I didn't answer. I set up boundaries within myself. Okay, I declared what my non-negotiables were. She probably had no clue what was going on. I didn't have to say, hey, I'm not talking to you anymore. I just began to set up boundaries. I began to make changes on my end. And then, eventually things changed and we have a wonderful relationship now. But there was that brief period where I had to distance myself. Didn't mean that I loved her any less. Didn't mean that I respected her any less. It just meant that that situation was unhealthy for me. And I made the choice to put myself first. And now our relationship is all the better for it. So if you're in a relationship that's unhealthy, if you're in an unhealthy relationship that is difficult for you to end totally, there's things that you can do. You can start by distancing yourself, setting up boundaries, and communicating your needs. But be careful, because if you are too passive, you can become victimized by the other person. If you're too aggressive, the other person may disregard your feelings. So this is where prayer comes in, because you have to find a way to effectively get the results you desire. Prayer, meditation, whatever you choose to do for you. But you have to do what you have to do to set up those boundaries. Now, if you're in an unhealthy relationship and you end it altogether, it could be very difficult, especially if the relationship is a romantic one, and it's someone that you're in love with or someone that you have strong feelings for. It could be difficult to fully walk away. So then how do you detox? That's also in chapter 9. Ways to detox from an unhealthy relationship. Spend time alone to regroup and focus on yourself. Occupy your time doing something you enjoy. Start writing. Start reading a book. Take up a new hobby. Paint. It's very therapeutic. Find something creative to do with your hands. That's very, very, very therapeutic. First and foremost, or the main thing that you have to do, is forgive yourself and the other person. Forgive yourself for being in that situation. Forgive the other person. Do some self-evaluating, look at how you ended up in that situation and what you can do to make sure that you never got into that situation again. Surround yourself with positive people, and like I said, commit to never entering into an unhealthy relationship ever again. So, we've talked about how to develop trust. We've talked about how to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy relationships, and how to remove yourself and detox from unhealthy situations and relationships in your life. Okay. In this chapter, we also talk about what is love. Because like I said, sometimes people stay in an abusive relationship because there is a misconception of love. So there are 4 types of love, and I'm going to go through them quickly. There's the agape love, which is referred to in the Christian faith, and that's the love of God, or the love that we have towards God or God has towards us. There's the filial love, which refers to affectionate, platonic, or friendship love. There's the storge love. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It refers to natural feelings towards family and friendship. And then there's the eros love, which refers to romantic and intimate love. So there are 4 different types of love. And all this is in the book. You can look at it in, further detail. But no matter what kind of love you experience or what kind of love you engage in, it all requires 4 things to make it work: discipline, concentration, patience, and communication. You need discipline to be in a healthy relationship, because when you open yourself up to the possibility of love and new relationships for the first time, you will experience various emotions. There may be times you will want to go back to the way things were in the past. Sometimes it's easier to be alone. Or sometimes you feel like it's easier to be alone. When you start a new relationship and you have all these mixed feelings and all these new things going on, it's like, what, do I really want to do this again? Do I really want to, open myself up? It's the uncertainty of what could happen. So sometimes you may want to go back to the way things were in the past. And then you have to make a conscious effort and decide to stick with the relationship and give it your all. Give yourself time to adjust and experience new things. Love requires concentration. You have to be present in the situation. Don't worry about what could happen or what used to happen or where the relationship is headed. Enjoy the moment. Focus on the here and now. You need patience. You need patience. You need patience. New relationships take time. It takes patience to grow, to develop. It's okay. Take it slow. Especially after an abusive or traumatic situation. Give yourself time. And it's okay to express to that person, hey, I'm, coming out of, this happened in my life. You might not want to go into full detail right away, but just let them know, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm going to take it slow. Be patient with me. Communicate your needs to that person. And be honest. Be transparent. Be totally open. Okay? Which ties into the next thing. Love takes communication. You have to effectively communicate when dealing with love and relationships. Love doesn't automatically lead to understanding or the ability to respond sensitively to one another's needs. You can't expect the other person to know how you feel or what you need if you don't tell him or her. You also need to be able to listen in order to give the other person what they need. Remember, you deserve love, to be loved, and to have healthy relationships. Study scriptures for this chapter, because each chapter has a study scripture, 1 or 2. It's 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 5. It defines love perfectly. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not want what belongs to others. It does not brag. It is not proud. It is not rude. It does not look out for its own interests. It does not easily become angry. It does not keep track of others' wrong. Love is not happy with evil, but it is full of joy when the truth is spoken. It always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, it never gives up. 1 Corinthians 13 and 13. The 3 most important things to have are faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And so in this activity, or in this chapter, I encourage the readers to look at the relationships in their lives and break them down in category of love. The 4 categories that we talked about. I encourage each person to identify what relationships in their lives fall under those categories. And then after that, look at the characteristics of each relationship and break it down to which relationships are healthy, which relationships are unhealthy. Then once you've done that, you've identified the toxic relationships in your life, you then have to decide how to move forward. Are you able to walk away from those relationships? Why or why not? What would happen if you stayed in your toxic relationship? What would be your wins and opportunities? Do you think the situation would improve? Are you losing anything if you stay? What attracted you to your toxic relationships? How will you prevent yourself from entering into toxic relationships moving forward? Okay? So that is the activity for chapter 9. For more information, like I said, you can order the book. It is www.heavenlyjewelsalliance.org. Thank you all for joining my scope. I really appreciate it. I hope this information resonated with you. If you are watching the replay, thank you so much. Don't forget to give me some hearts. Tap it up, tap it up, tap it up. And, just listen. It is okay. We all make decisions that we're not proud of. We all enter into relationships that may not be the best for us. And that's okay. Life is full of wins and opportunities. Life is full of chances to make mistakes, chances to grow. It's okay. The thing that's not okay is if you recognize your faults and you recognize your wrongdoings and your mistakes and you stay in that place. That's when you open yourself up to things that you may not necessarily experience. It's not okay. So, you deserve to be loved. You deserve to give love. You are love. You were created in love. Love is not an option. You're required to love God, love yourself, and love others. It's mandatory. So, as I always say, discover your inner sparkle and let it shine because the world is waiting. Good night.